Check out our streaming schedule for this week. We stream every single day on this channel, talking about all things sports history. And now with college basketball season really getting in the swing of things, we are doing a lot of college basketball streams, commentating the action as we get one step closer to March Madness. So join me every night as we call the best of college basketball. And now, on with our feature presentation. Well, that was certainly one of the Super Bowls of all time. Yeah, I'm not sure how many people saw this one coming. Not the fact that the Philadelphia Eagles won the game, seeing as it was basically a pick'em, and many people have the Eagles as the more talented team, even if they acknowledge that the Chiefs are likely going to win. But the fact that the Eagles absolutely decimated the Chiefs. It wasn't even close. The Chiefs, from start to finish, were just totally outmatched. Any belief that the Chiefs were going to win this game came on what they had done in the past, and not what they were actually doing. There was not a single facet of Super Bowl 59 where the Eagles were worse than the Chiefs. I've said it for a while, partly because there were so many games that the Eagles won despite Nick Sirianni's in-game management skills, even though I've got no complaints about him from an X's and O's standpoint, and he coached his butt off in this Super Bowl and fully deserves a ring, that the Eagles were one of the most talented teams in NFL history, and that they had no real weak spots, or at least fewer weak spots than most champions. And they proved it here. We're going to look back on the 2024 Philadelphia Eagles as one of the greatest and most talented teams of all time, especially considering how they dominated, and I truly mean dominated, over their final two games of the season. Even if the game itself was one of the ugliest and worst Super Bowls in recent memory, and maybe all time, with the game being over by halftime, and the only thing people look forward to in the second half being Drake's funeral, this was a heck of a performance by a well-deserving champion on so many levels. Certified perfection. And during this Super Bowl, there was one game that came to mind that this reminded me of. There was one game where, in so many ways, this felt like deja vu. And that game turned out to be a Super Bowl won by a team that many people would consider to be rivals with the Philadelphia Eagles in so many ways, oddly enough. That game, Super Bowl XXIX, this game right here, won by the San Francisco 49ers 30 years ago. It wasn't just the fact that both games were absolute blowouts. There are way more similarities than you might think. There are some of these that are going to be painfully obvious, and then there are some of these that are so similar that you might think it's the same exact game, and the script writers just decided to reuse a script in giving the Eagles their second Super Bowl win in franchise history. So with that in mind, let's dive right in, because Super Bowl 59 and Super Bowl 29 were the exact same game. But before I dive into the details of the game itself, if you like learning more about the weird and the wacky history of the NFL, then this is the perfect place for you, because we talk about all things NFL history all the time with a new video and a new live stream every single day. We post all throughout the season and the off season. The grind does not stop on this channel. So if you like that sort of stuff and you want to learn more about football history, then be sure to hit that like button down below, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single video or live stream that we do. I really appreciate it in advance. We're trying to hit 70,000 subscribers, and all support helps. Now, with that in mind, let's start with the team that won and the similarities between the two. Starting with the winner, at Super Bowl XXIX, the NFC team beat the team from the AFC West, with the San Francisco 49ers defeating the San Diego Chargers. At Super Bowl LIX, the NFC team beat the team from the AFC West, with the Philadelphia Eagles defeating the Kansas City Chiefs. That one's obvious. However, the similarities go deeper than you think. For the 49ers, in order to win this Super Bowl, they won all of their playoff games at home. Prior to the Super Bowl, their playoff run started with beating a team in the NFC North, or the NFC Central as it was known back then, as they defeated the Chicago Bears by multiple scores in the first round. And the run ended in the NFC Championship by beating an NFC East team, as they defeated the Dallas Cowboys by multiple scores. For the Philadelphia Eagles, it was the exact same thing. In order to win this Super Bowl, they won all of their playoff games at home. Prior to the Super Bowl, their playoff run started with beating a team in the NFC North, as they defeated the Green Bay Packers by multiple scores in the first round. and the run ended in the NFC Championship by beating an NFC East team, as they defeated the Washington Commanders by multiple scores. And no, this is not retroactive history. The NFC Central is literally the NFC North minus the Buccaneers. The NFC North history goes back to the NFC Central, and the Packers and Bears have always been in the same division, so it counts. Going beyond that, both Super Bowl XXIX and Super Bowl LIX were won by teams that finished the season with just 3 losses, with the 49ers going 13-3 and the Eagles going 14-3. But it gets even crazier than that. The 49ers lost 2 games before their bye week and 1 game after. They had a Week 9 bye and lost in Weeks 2 and 5, then only lost in Week 17 after that. The Eagles lost 2 games before their bye week and 1 game after. They had a Week 5 bye and lost in Weeks 2 and 4, then they only lost in Week 16 after that. So both teams started the season off 1-1, winning opening day in a standalone national game, with the Eagles beating the Packers in Brazil and the 49ers beating the Raiders on Monday Night Football, and then losing in Week 2. And in terms of the makeup of the losses for both teams, it's actually ridiculous. The first loss for the 49ers was a 1-score game, losing 24-17 to the Kansas City Chiefs. The first loss for the Eagles was a 1-score game, losing 22-21 to the Atlanta Falcons. The second loss for the 49ers was a blowout, losing 40-8 to the Philadelphia Eagles in a game where 48 points were scored. The second loss for the Eagles was a blowout, losing 33-16 to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in a game where 49 points were scored. And the third loss for the 49ers was a 1-score game, losing 21-14 to the Minnesota Vikings. The third loss for the Eagles, a 1-score game, losing 36-33 to the Washington Commanders. Both teams suffered their third and final loss of the season after going on the road. But we're not done with that yet, because when you look at who these teams lost to, it's even more insane. Again, each team had 3 losses total. One of those losses was at home against a 9-loss team that didn't make the playoffs that season. For the 49ers in 1994, they lost to the Philadelphia Eagles, who, after a good start to the season, collapsed to finish 7-9. And for the Eagles in 2024, they lost to the Atlanta Falcons, who, after a good start to the season, collapsed to finish 8-9. Each team lost 1 game on the road to a 10-win team that won their division. For the 49ers in 1994, they lost to the Minnesota Vikings, the champions of the NFC Central. And for the Eagles in 2024, they lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the champions of the NFC South. And each team lost 1 game on the road to a wild card. For the 49ers in 1994, they lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. And for the Eagles in 2024, they lost to the Washington Commanders. 1 loss against a 9-loss team, 1 loss against a 10-win division champion, and 1 loss against the wild card. Kinda crazy when you think about it like that. And the similarities in terms of the champion teams don't stop there. For the 49ers, the game marked the second starting quarterback and second head coach in franchise history to win a Super Bowl, with Steve Young and George Seifert getting that nod after the first one was Joe Montana and Bill Walsh. Granted, Seifert already won a Super Bowl as the 49ers coach at Super Bowl XXIV, but he was still the second coach in team history to win the big one. And for the Eagles, it's the same thing, with Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni getting that nod after the first one was won by Nick Foles and Doug Peterson. And amazingly enough, for both teams, this win marked their 5th world championship ever. For the 49ers, they won it all in 1981, 1984, 1988, and 1989. And for the Eagles, even though this was their second Super Bowl win, having won in 2017, they also won 3 NFL championships before that, winning in 1948, 1949, and 1960. It's their 5th championship banner ever. So we've established that the makeup of the 1994 49ers and the 2024 Eagles is the same. But what about the actual game itself? Well, that was also identical. Get ready for some of these because you are going to have your mind blown, with just about the only difference being that the Super Bowl XXIX halftime show was promoting a Disney ride, and the Super Bowl LIX halftime show was promoting the fact that Drake preys on Disney's target audience. In both Super Bowls, the winning team scored in the 40s and the losing team scored in the 20s, with the 49ers winning Super Bowl XXIX over the Chargers by a final score of 49-26, and the Eagles winning Super Bowl LIX over the Chiefs by a final score of 40-22. Alright, that one was pretty obvious, but in both games, not only did the champion never trail, or have the game be tied at any point outside of 0-0, but the champion was up by 3 scores at the half, with the 49ers leading at 28-10 at Super Bowl XXIX, and the Eagles leading at 24-0. And don't worry, I've saved the craziest stat for last in the video. But before I get to that, we should have known how this game was going to go from the start, seeing as the first play from scrimmage was identical. In Super Bowl XXIX, the 49ers lost the coin toss and received first. The very first play was a 4-yard run by William Floyd. In Super Bowl LIX, the Eagles lost the coin toss and received first. The very first play was a 4-yard run by Saquon Barkley. Both games started the same way, and both games ended the same way, as even though it was out of reach, the losing team scored not one, but 2 two-point conversions in the second half on passing attempts to make it closer. For the Chargers, after they scored their final 2 touchdowns, they got back-to-back 2-point tries on passes, with Stan Humphries hitting Mark CA on the first one and Alfred Papunu on the second one. For the Chiefs, after they scored their final 2 touchdowns, they got back-to-back 2-point tries on passes, with Patrick Mahomes hitting Justin Watson on the first one and DeAndre Hopkins on the second one. In both games, the final points were a 2-point try from the losing team, with that being the Chargers and Chiefs respectively. And oddly enough, in both games, the final touchdown came off of a long pass, with the final touchdown of Super Bowl XXIX being a late strike by Stan Humphries to Tony Martin, a receiver in his first season with the team, from 30 yards out, and the final touchdown of Super Bowl LIX being a late strike by Patrick Mahomes to Xavier Worthy, a receiver in his first season with the team, from 50 yards out. But despite the late efforts to make the score more respectable, make no mistake about it, neither Super Bowl XXIX nor Super Bowl LIX was particularly close. At Super Bowl XXIX, the losing team, the Chargers, turned it over 3 times. At Super Bowl LIX, the same thing happened, with the losing team, the Chiefs, turning it over 3 times. In fact, at Super Bowl XXIX, the game was so out of hand that the starting quarterback was pulled for the final 2 drives. Steve Young did not play the last 2 drives, and he was replaced by Elvis Grbac, who went 0 for 1 with a passer rating of 39.6. At Super Bowl LIX, the game was so out of hand that the same thing happened. Jalen Hurts didn't play the last 2 drives, and he was replaced by Kenny Pickett, who went 0 for 1 with a passer rating of 39.6. And there are some other weird similarities with both games too. Both games had the winning quarterback get named the MVP, Steve Young in Super Bowl XXIX and Jalen Hurts in Super Bowl LIX. Both games featured a non-offensive touchdown being scored, with Super Bowl XXIX having a kickoff return for a touchdown and Super Bowl LIX having a pick 6 that I'm not going to show just yet because we're going to talk more about it in just a little bit, because I'm saving the best for last. Both games featured 8 kicks attempted by the winning team. At Super Bowl XXIX, Doug Bryan attempted 7 extra points and 1 field goal for the 49ers, while at Super Bowl LIX, Jake Elliott attempted 4 extra points and 4 field goals for the Eagles. And both games, oddly enough, did not feature a single successful 4th down conversion for either team. The teams combined to go 0 for 4 at Super Bowl XXIX and 0 for 2 at Super Bowl LIX. But now, it's time for the big kahuna. All of these stats pale in comparison to this one, because finally, we get to the craziest stat of them all, and trust me, if you haven't had your mind blown yet, this one is going to blow your mind. At Super Bowl XXIX, the starting quarterback for the Chargers was Stan Humphries, who threw 2 interceptions. At Super Bowl LIX, the starting quarterback for the Chiefs was Patrick Mahomes, who threw 2 interceptions. Now you might be saying, come on, that's fairly common for a quarterback to throw 2 picks. But let's dig deeper. At Super Bowl XXIX, the first interception on Humphries was by Eric Davis, who was drafted by the 49ers in the 2nd round of the NFL Draft. At Super Bowl LIX, The first interception on Mahomes? Well, that was by Cooper DeJean, who was drafted by the Eagles in, you guessed it, the second round of the NFL draft. But that's not all. We're digging deeper. We're not done yet. What about the second pick? At Super Bowl XXIX, the second interception on Humphries was by Toy Cook. This was Cook's first season with the team, and before he was on the 49ers, he spent his entire career with the New Orleans Saints. At Super Bowl LIX, the second interception on Mahomes was by Zach Bond. This was Bond's first season with the team, and before he was with the Eagles, guess where he spent his entire career? You guessed it, the New Orleans Saints. Both Cook and Bond were acquired by their respective teams in that offseason from New Orleans. And both players even had identical paths with the Saints. For Cook, in his first season, he made the playoffs on a 12-win team, making it in 1987 with a 12-3 record before they lost at home to a wild card. And in his final season, he missed the playoffs in 1993 on an 8-loss team, with the Saints going 8-8. For Bond, in his first season, he made the playoffs on a 12-win team, making it in 2020 with a 12-4 record before they lost at home to a wild card. And in his final season, he missed the playoffs in 2023 on an 8-loss team, with the Saints going 9-8. How nuts is that? Seriously, how nuts is that? Not only in both games did both starting quarterbacks throw 2 interceptions, but the men who caught the picks in that exact order had identical career paths before getting there. So when it comes to both of these games you've been watching this whole time, if you thought that you saw the script for Super Bowl LIX before, and if you thought that game was familiar, that's because it was. It absolutely was. Both games featured identical teams winning it all in terms of their makeup, including the defensive coordinators, with Ray Rhodes for the 49ers being in his first season with the team after coming over from the Green Bay Packers, a team that lost in the playoffs the previous year, and Vic Fangio for the Eagles being in his first season with the team after coming over from the Miami Dolphins, a team that lost in the playoffs the previous year. Both games started the same and ended the same, and both games featured identical turnovers and scoring runs, especially at the end when the game was well out of reach. These games were strikingly similar to the point where you could say that it was a classic case of deja vu. Because when history looks back on this game, they'll look back and say that Super Bowl LIX was just like its predecessor 30 years prior at Super Bowl XXIX. These two Super Bowls were identical. Be sure to like and subscribe if you have not done so already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and check out my other channels, JG8 for the history of college football, JG7 for the history of baseball, and JG9 News, where we talk about all things happening in the NFL. Join me every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, where we'll play live NFL trivia for cash prizes. And make sure to join me live, as we're on stream just about every single day. And thanks to all our Patreon members and our YouTube members for helping out the channel. See how you become a member and show your support financially in the description down below.